Hello, everybody. Welcome to our live today here in our lunging training group. We've been trying to do these regular live sessions to answer all the questions or a part of the questions that come in from our new members. Today, it's us two. It's on the one side, myself, Sue. I'm one of the coaches from lungingtraining.com. And I'm really excited to welcome our guest, Gibran, here today, who has been a very active member in our group and has been answering a lot of the questions. So I said, hey, come on along, join me in the live to answer a couple of your pressing questions from our new members. Gibran, I'd love you to introduce yourself real quick. What are you all about? What do you do?
What am I all about? What do I do? My name is Gibran Stout. I have been in horses for 50 years. I've done about every discipline there is. As an adult, my focus has been on dressage. And when my children started riding, we got into vaulting. And my dressage training was very heavy in lunging. So that was my strength when I came into vaulting. And it's still a passion. I still love it. I love the ability to really see the horse clearly and not worry about my own influence on the horse and its training. I love how there's so much variety, even though it seems very boring to be running around in circles. But when you really break it down and pay attention to it, like any training program, it's very specific and very detailed, and it gives you an opportunity to do things that you can't always do under saddle.
Right.
Of course, there's things that you can only do under saddle, but there's a lot you can do for fitness and training, and I really enjoy that. And I really enjoy having that perspective of, 20, 30 feet away and being able to control the horse as if you're riding them. So I enjoy that. So thank you for doing this group. Thank you for doing this call. And I'm just happy to help.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to host. So we have, first of all, I want to say thank you to the members of the group. We have been really blown away by the recent amount of requests. So we're reaching 4,000 members actually, and this is 4,000 members of a very specific topic. I mean, we're really talking about lunging, and we're talking about lunging in a form that we populate or promote it more as a cross training. Lunging has so many different viewpoints or perspectives, especially here in the US where we are, and it has good and negative allocations along the way. So when we started the platform, lungingtraining.com, the idea was really to be a resource for the topic and bring people together like yours and others, and also have a discussion on the topic, how it can be really beneficial for different disciplines. So for you, very obvious, you coming from the vaulting world, and in vaulting, it's clear that the lunging is a really important component. But I'm looking at your dressage background, or have had a lot of with also participants in our past courses that come from Western, from jumpers, trail riders, that really said, oh, we haven't really seen the benefits of lunging in that manner or that perspective. We're great this information is out here, and we have a place where we can talk about it. Gibran, what are some of the experiences that you have made where you have seen some challenges with lunging or in the application, or when people have a conversation about it? And what would you say are some benefits of it that are really not being leveraged across disciplines?
Well, I know that I've, as a younger person, as a teenager, I did a lot of hunter jumper. Before that, as a child, I did a lot of Western, and
Cool.
So I've come through those disciplines, and I know that the perception of lunging has always been to get the bucks out. Yep. And it was also round pen training, and really the only purpose was to get the bucks out. The horse, if it was on a lunge line at all, it would be in a halter, and it was not specific. It was not detailed. It was not, clear. It really was essentially turnout. So I understand that a lot of people don't really see lunging that way, and so this is a great opportunity to kind of change that perspective of lunging, because it can be both.
Right.
It doesn't have to be one or the other. I do in my own program, really, I don't call a horse loose in a round pen lunging. I know a lot of people call that free lunging, but quite frankly, if it doesn't have a lunge line in my book, it's not lunging. It's round pen work. So I do understand it from that point, and so I enjoy educating people. Is my perspective. Everyone does it different, as we all know. Horses, we all do it different. I feel like I got a little off topic. Did I fully answer your question?
No, it's great. I think that I can feel you on that one, and that's kind of the purpose of the group as well, or the platform that we started is to like exactly show out these different benefits of lunging, that it is more than just getting the bucks out, and how you can actually use it for training, like build a lunging training plan, actually assess where your horse is at, like where's your horse at in the pyramid of training. Is your horse stiff all the time? Are you looking for looseness, more suppleness? And how do you really get your horse to step under? So I think that's really like where we have a conversation about lunging, what we're looking for. And then also, we'll get to this later. I know you're also a fan of applying side reins and doing that in like a way that it really serves these goals compared to just being a restrictive aid, basically.
Yeah. No.
Cool. So we have a lot of questions actually from our participants. Every time a new member joins the group, we welcome them and we ask them to ask a question. Due to the high volume of recent members, we're not able to quite catch up with all of the questions. However, some of them we see patterns and they're redundant. So we always recommend to the new members also to kind of search the group, especially Gibran has answered a lot of the questions. No, we love it. Thank you for being an active member and answering so many of the questions. And then we have also kind of a Q&A and some resources and how-to guides on the website. But however, searching the group is a good approach. And a couple of them we're going to answer live today. And we will be tagging the people that asked the question afterwards below in the comments. And so you guys know that your question was actually answered. Cool. All right, let's see what we got. So one of the first questions was from Angie Nail, I'd say is her last name. So she was reading out, I'm here to learn as much about lunging and in-hand work as possible, as I feel that the connection we can build with our horse on the ground is often overlooked by the rush, and many have to get in the saddle. I totally agree with that one. I feel like we're so much more focused on being in the saddle, taking lessons in the saddle versus taking lessons and dedicating time to groundwork or like cross-training night lunging. And then she says, my question for lunging will be to ask about the double lunge line. What is the best brand of lines out there, and what lengths of line do you recommend? Gibran, would you like to answer that question?
I don't think that the brand is important as much as what it's made out of. I personally like cotton, cotton lunge lines, cotton long lines, side reins, as they don't stretch. So nylon can stretch a little, and leather over time will stretch. The downside is that, like, I go through side reins. I go through a lot of them because I use them every single day.
Right.
So they do they wear out. They don't wear as well as leather and nylon, but they don't stretch, and so you have a more consistent a line. You know how long it is every time. And the length will really depend on how big your space is, what your goals are for that session, and how comfortable you are handling any excess. Excuse me. I like to have longer so I can make my circle as big as possible. If you have a short lunge line, you're limited. Yeah. If you have a long lunge line, I have like some lunge lines, I think they're around 25 feet, but then I have one that's like 35 feet. I also take the snaps off and I put a leather strap on the end that there's a connection. Like the German lunge lines have them. Yep. American lunge lines don't. So I literally take it to my saddle maker and I have them take off the snap and I have them put on a leather strap. So it's a connection like reins, like leather reins. So there is that little bit of leather at the end.
That's awesome that you do that. Do you mind explaining why you do that, or what is the advantages and disadvantages of having that clear like leather strip versus the moving snap?
Yeah, I like to have the leather connection because I was taught that lunging is an extension of riding. And so your lunge line is your reins, and or whip is your leg. And
Yep.
so, as with riding, I don't ride with the metal snap attaching my reins, and so I like that feeling, where you can do, you give your squeezes, your half halts, your
Yep.
full, and I'm constantly, playing with the lunge like you would if you're riding. There's
Yeah.
really no difference. It's the exact same cues, and I like to have that same contact and that same feeling when I'm lunging, and having them follow your hand, and it's just a better contact and better communication with the horse, I find.
I
So
love your
that's why.
comparison that you say you wouldn't use like reins for riding like that. That makes so much sense.
No, I
Yeah.
mean, some people do, but I like that feeling. I like that contact, and the horse likes it too. So,
Yeah. So we
um,
always underline in our course too, like we actually outline the different ways, that you can get, and it's true. The leather ones are really hard to get here. The advantage is really, it's just that, as you already underlined, it's a much stronger connection, and you don't have it like swivel around or like move in itself, which gives can give a mixed cue to the horse from your hand. So that's kind of where I also look at it. We're coming off a bit, and I love the discussion from the double lunging question. So I think the lengths, kind of from what the book says, if you have a normal lunge line, it's supposed to be between 25 and 35 feet. I personally like the 30 feet. And if you do lunge, you want to try to have a good part where you go as wide as possible in a circle. Obviously, in our ideal world, we have a big arena for that, but often we don't. So if you have a small arena and a really long lunge line, that can get annoying, and you have just a lot in your hand. So if I think about then, the double lunge line is basically needs the double of the length. So you would be at around 60 feet almost if you want to clip it in on both sides. I personally, I'm with you on that one. I don't have a favorite brand. I do like, if I can find them, sometimes you find double lunge line that are a little bit more narrow at the beginning and where they run through the rings. Those are an advantage compared to using a standard lunge line if you double lunge. Overall, I always ask people for their motivation, why they want to double lunge. And when I have the conversation, we often come actually to the point that lunging might already help them a lot as well. It takes quite a more experienced hand and skill for double lunging, since there is, depending on how applied, a big risk that the horse just comes too short. They tend to have a tendency to roll in their neck too much, or you really have to. The nice thing is it feels like you're riding with two reins.
Yes.
So you have more of an outside rein than you would have with the normal lunge line. However, I always recommend rather starting off with a normal lunge line, experiencing some with like sliding side reins, and then depending what goal you want to reach, working with the double lunge line. Cool. Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you to Angie for asking this question. So we have our second question is from our member Jessica Selvechuk. Thanks for your question. She is asking, how do you start off learning how to lunge? And a follow-up question would be, how do you get a horse to start lunging? So I think this is a great question, and this is something we often get firsthand. So I highly recommend, Jessica, to just follow our blog on the website, and I can put the link in as well. We have a lot of tips on how to get your horse started on lunging, either way, what to do if you as a lunger are not experienced, and what are steps you can do. And also the other ones is like what you can do if your horse has never lunged before. So these are the two aspects, right? Depending what your lunging experience is. I think this question really goes more back. How do you start off learning how to lunge? Could be in both. For the horse, how do you get a horse started lunging? So it kind of goes into both aspects. Gibran, I would love to hear your perspective on that one. I'm happy to add on to it. Otherwise, this is basically the core of what we do. I could like talk an whole hour about that. So.
I know. I think probably the biggest thing that I see with people who are starting to lunge, or horses that are starting to lunge, is the people like to lead. They like to lead. They want to lead the horse. And I think that you have to remember that lunging is driving, really. And most horses that are broke have been driven initially. And so you have to stop thinking that you're going to, lead the horse. You're going to, because everybody wants, when the horse stops, they always do this, like they're going to lead the horse for 30 feet away. And we have to remember that we're driving the horse into our hand as if we were riding. And so it's really pushing from behind. And oftentimes when I have green horses, or I've even taken horses, just driving horses, and they have no clue how to lunge, you start off by driving. And then you gradually, so it's a triangle as with lunging, but it's a triangle behind the horse. And then you push them forward, and then you start to migrate to the middle of the circle as they get better. But that's the biggest thing I see, is that people try to lead the horse, if you will. It's just instinct, I think, from, leading the horse, but you have to kind of reset your brain to think, I'm driving them into my hand as if I were riding.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I love how you work.
My suggestion would be that. So
I love the pictures that you work with, like kind of driving it into your head. Yeah. I think that some patterns on that I see when we have our course participants. So we do the master class is a 10 to 12 week course where we go through everything of lunging. We also have people that have lunged before to kind of refresh it. But the three main key things people appreciate a lot to go through again, or actually take a pulse check on, is actually your own lunging skills, which is, okay, I love how you talk about the triangle. That's a good example. And I go along basically like, okay, first off, how are you handling the lunge line correctly? How's your practicing of handling the lunge line correctly? How do you hold your hands? How do you act with the lunge line properly? So that's one we like to go through intensively. And it's like I always say, people take lessons in riding to correct their riding, but nobody takes a lunging lesson. I myself do go to take lunging lessons because you need a mirror. You need somebody that says, hey, Sue, your hand is coming too low, or your elbow is going out. Like, it's the little things that just slip through. So that actually goes back to your own body language. A lot we see when we have people that ask problems, oh, the horse keeps running inside too much, or it's like it turns towards me when I try to start lunging it. That is a lot connected with your own body language and how to handle that correctly. So we're coming from how to handle a lunge line, how to handle your own body language, how to obviously handle the whip correctly, to frame that triangle properly, to use it as a driving aid, and last but not least, your voice. So that's these four parts you can, like, I feel like can do a regular pulse check in, and these are four important cues to start off with, as if you as a person want to start how to lunge, to familiarize with that and look at resources to actually know how to use that properly. And then if you know how to use these cues properly, it's really how to get the horse started. I personally, actually, if a horse has never lunged before, I love to work with a cavesson. I put them on a cavesson because it works them really first over the nose, and you can focus to tune in the horse and your body language. I walk parallel to them. I work with them that they understand the cue, what means pause or hold, whatever you want to use, just be consistent in your cues. And then really work on, okay, if my whip goes towards the front, that means I need to stop or I need to slow down. So I tune in with the horse, my body cues, what my voice comments that I'm going to give, and what does the whip actually do. I tend to walk parallel with them first, and just have that relationship on the ground, and then I extend the distance and start actually lunging on the circle. That way you avoid the problem of the horse turning in, not stopping when we want to. Consistency in the cues is extremely important when we start off with the horses. So, but again, I could fill a whole hour on that with way too many details. But I like what you said a lot, and I hope that we answered. Oh, go ahead if you want to add a little bit more to it.
No, that was good. I will add one little thing, is that for when you talk about consistency of cues, it has to be the same, like with every single person who's lunging the horse. We have a couple different people. And one of the things that I've picked up from some leg level lungers in vaulting is the whip. So oftentimes, a lot of horses that I retrain, for us, our whip cue is upright, is neutral. And then, and so we think of a speedometer. And so when we bring it down towards the horse's haunches, see if I can get the picture, that's driving. And then when we bring it towards the horse's face, that's the hoe, or that's the blocking. So you have your pushing and your blocking and your neutral. A lot of retrained horses, neutral kind of freaks them out.
Yeah, it's true.
Also, I have a very, very long whip. I don't crack it ever.
Yeah.
I will hit the horse just like you would if with a dressage whip. Like, I don't want to say hit, but you snap it like a rat tail with your brothers, right?
Yeah.
And so you throw it. So I will give them the visual cue of the driving, and then if they don't respond, then I will flick it and get them with it. So, but it's a speedometer type mental picture, which is one I was given, which I loved as well. So now I use it all the time.
I love it. We're learning more mental pictures here. I'm going to pick that up right away. That's great.
Okay.
That's awesome. Sweet. Well, this is our question from Jessica. And now here we have a question from Lindsay Skogan. Lindsay asked, which is more common, lunging in a round pen or no lunge line? Or lunging with a lunge line? So I think this is a great question, actually, Lindsay. It's a common discussion, like where we even talk about, and Gibran, we talked about this earlier, like what is even all defined as lunging? There's like, if you talk to different disciplines, there's a very different, the Western people have a different common understanding of it than like a dressage person or like a jumper or the vaulting people, obviously. And some of the cues are different as well. Talking about the whip and vaulting, we have a very long whip. And for example, the whip towards the halt goes rather behind us towards the front. And in the classical way, how dressage trains it, sometimes the shorter lunging whip even goes under the lunge line towards the horse, so the front. So there's the philosophies are similar. I think personally how we differentiate it is, what is your objective and reason for lunging? If you lunge for training, if you want your horse for cross training, for stretching, lengthening, conditioning, you need a lunge line to do that. You need to have proper equipment and be connected to the horse. So that, in my opinion, doesn't work with free lunging. Free lunging is a more like a liberty style, I would say. And it's also limited working if you just lunge with a halter, for example. If you lunge for cross training, you got to make sure you use equipment where the cues are clear with it. But love to have your perspective on that, Gibran, about topic lunging with a lunge line, without a lunge line, and different practices on that.
Yeah. I let all my horses have a turnout first. So if I have horses that are fresh and need to play. And so for me, when they have no equipment on, that's their time to play and get their bucks out. For me, and everybody does it differently, it's not lunging if there's no lunge line. It's a turnout. But again, everybody does it differently. I kind of equate it, riding and lunging, like you said, it's a training. So if you're doing it for training, you would never, well, I can't say never because some people do. Most people wouldn't hop on their horse with no bridle or with just a halter, because you want the cues to be consistent. So I like for it to be as consistent as possible. So if I ride my horse in a bridle, I want to lunge him in a bridle with side reins to help keep him balanced, and a lunge line so I can communicate cues in real time to the bit, to the horse. And you just can't do that if the horse is loose. Now, I will lunge green horses in a round pen because lots of times they just don't even know. And that gives me, the rail gives me that block that I can push them against, so I can push them forward. And I always use side reins when I'm lunging so that they can't turn around. And quite frankly, I would rather them gallop away and be forward than stop and turn in towards me. So I think a lot of it is just the words that you use. But like you said, it's the goal for what you want to do with your training. I like for my lunging to be 100% consistent with what would be done under saddle. And it also makes it easier when there's multiple people working the horse because it's exactly the same every time. So you really have to define what your goals are for that session, and every session can be different. So,
yep. That's a very good point. I want to underline, stretch what you say. You really want to make sure what your goals for each session. And that's something that we talk a lot about, is like setting actually training goals for your horse. And that could be like, like we recommend to develop like a training plan, like a 10 to 12 week training plan that can perfectly support your goals that you have on the saddle and complement it. And it's also good to have a goal actually for each session that you do. Like, are you working on like lengthening or stretching or rhythm that day? So, and even for the vaulting horses, I keep recommending and say, yes, we lunge them when they're in training for vaulting training, but if we cross train them, that we do different exercises with them, right? We would include pole work, for example. So that's cool.
Every vaulting horse I know is also ridden dressage. Like literally, they don't vault for more than a couple days a week. It is too much. But it's also too, sometimes your goals may change in the middle of the session. So don't don't be disappointed if you go in and you're like, okay, my goal is connection. And then you get into your session and you have a young horse or a fresh horse and they're not there mentally. You can reassess your goals during your session and say, okay, today my only goal is relaxed and forward.
Right. That's so true. I feel like my person, I like to do endurance sports. So if I would be a marathon training, there is something on your training plan every day. And you try to follow that, but there's some days where you just don't feel it and the horse is the same way. And then you might do, instead of intervals, you might just do like an easy trot or something. And same with the horse. I appreciate that you underlined that. A plan gives direction, but it doesn't mean it's a stringent like line that you have to follow.
It is totally not carved in stone, and it changes constantly. Every day is a new day, and every horse progresses differently. And I have bad days, they have bad days, or really good days where they feel really, really, really good.
We actually have a live question here from Susie Stearns. She is asking, what do you do if your horse kicks out? What should you do? So you start lunging and your horse is kicking out. So Susie will answer your question, and if you have another question, feel free to ask it along the way. If you're still watching.
Okay. Do you get that, or do I? Who you want to answer, or do you want me to?
Either way. So I think it was interesting. Actually, we had a post, a really funny picture in a group the other day of somebody's horse as a black horse really badly kicking out really high. We got a lot of likes and comments. I think the lunging, again, there is a mix. Lunging is used also to kind of like get some bucks out of the horse. And when you start lunging, I actually make sure. The question is always when it kicks, where it comes from. Is it because it is way too fresh and it just got kind of out of the stall and has been sitting in the stall for a while and didn't have enough torn out? It's just the over amount of energy. Or is it kicking because out of like, it's like ignoring your cues, or it's kicking against the whip? So that's a huge difference. And it's very important to differentiate and look at. If the horse kicks after the whip, then there is a reason for it. It might not respect it, or it had an experience with it, or it is a question of, how do we say, of leadership. At the end of the day, we give the horse security through giving clear cues on what we want them to do. So let's assume the horse is kicking because it has just too much energy. I make sure to correct through forward, meaning I might give a half hold on the line, but make sure I use my whip as a driving aid and send the horse forward. So don't freeze because you're shocked out of the horse kicked out and stop lunging mentally. Stay present and move the horse forward so it can move out of what's happening. Gibran, feel free to add on. And I think actually we had another person commenting on it.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. You have to really define where it's coming from. If it's coming from freshness, that's one of the reasons I like to turn them out first so they get a chance to play. And now we're working. Yep. But if it's defiance, you need to have them they need to be obedient on the lunge line as they would be under saddle. So for me, on the lunge line is no different than under saddle, and I will correct it. I will usually give them a voice correction. I will tell them no. I have several different, and I will let them know in uncertain terms that that's unacceptable. But also too, it's important to note that in order for a horse to really act up, to buck or to rear or any of those behaviors are failure to move forward. So literally a horse has to stop moving forward, even if for a fraction of a second, in order to do those things. So if you're keeping them moving forward, they really don't have the opportunity to do that. So don't be afraid. I would, like I said earlier, I would rather a horse take off galloping than buck.
Yeah.
For me, forward it's all about moving forward and keeping them focused. And again, if it's I will correct bucking, because that's not acceptable for me. This is training time. So once that bit is in their mouth, we're working and we're training. So that's what I would do.
Yeah, love your perspective.
Forward.
I think, Susie, if there's more questions to that, if you need more details of that question, feel free to reach out to Gibran or myself. We can go deeper with you on that. So we have actually another live question, which is similar to a question that we have in our list. So Shayna Maddock, thanks for your question. She's putting out, my pony is going to be coming back into work after children infusion for hock spavin. What sort of low impact lunging exercises can I do to encourage hock mobility and build her back up slowly? So I think this addresses kind of the topic on what type of lunging can you do after a horse comes back from an injury, which I'm going to loop also in with a question. I know, Gibran, we had one question on that. Let me actually find it real quick. Yes, so here is a question from Jen S. Her horse is coming back. The last several years, she has been treated for and successfully rehabbed from EPM 3 separate times, and as a result has some minor neurological damage. So basically, she has started doing some lunging with ground poles and physical therapy to help to improve it. So I'm always looking for new exercises to help with this and keep things fun and interesting for her. So that's why she also joined our group. So love, if you want to start off with some ideas on what you can do with horses that come back from an injury.
Slow, big and slow, really big and really slow. I would keep circles really, really big. I would be you need to be patient. It will take months and months of patience and work, and trotting. I wouldn't don't canter. You want them to be pushing evenly. Trot is the best gymnastic gait. And I would also, my vet and my chiropractor have driven into me doing hill work. So if you can do outside of lunging, do hills, walking, backing up, and then on the lunge line, trotting and walking, walk, trot transitions. Keep it very, very low impact. Focus on the overall frame. I'm not a headset person. I'm an overall frame of the horse person. You want them reaching up and under, and that will help strengthen their core, which strengthens their back, and it strengthens the hind end. You want it long and low, a long and low frame, so that will encourage the reaching up and under. And you just have to be patient, and it'll be months of boredom.
Yeah.
So be prepared for not being very exciting, but your patience will be rewarded in the long run. And follow your vet's advice. I know a lot of vets are not a fan of lunging, but in all fairness, it's not good if it's not done properly. So avoid small circles, and I wouldn't even canter. I wouldn't canter for a super long time.
I agree with you very much on that one. Actually, we had a really nice journey with one participant in our last masterclass. She came with a horse that had actually several lameness issues. One was a 3D connected, and some were other past issues. So over the course of the 12 weeks, we kind of followed the progress on what she could be doing, and that came up with more ideas and exercises for her. And what we observed on that case was especially lunging doesn't, there's a lot that lunging doesn't always just start with the horse is out and it's running on the lunge line. And I feel like even if a horse comes off an injury, we can sometimes take a step back and even start with our relationship to the horse. So she started doing just familiarizing herself and the horse with the cues to make sure that it understood when it's halt. Forward, this horse was turning in a lot. It was looking for direction. So she worked on that one. Also, I actually recommend to more, in that case, work with a cavesson. There's no point you're going to use anytime soon side reins with that horse. And I'm absolutely with you. It should be work on relaxation, rhythm. That means trot, like different tempies of trot, like slower trot, more forward trot. And in that manner, I love to work with a cavesson along the way, because you also can already encourage over the nose the horse to actually lengthen in the manner that a horse feels it's able to do that and start stretching while it's still building up its muscles. Another one I like to include is a pole. I would only use one. Every time the horse steps over the pole, it automatically has to lift up that belly, and that works towards that back and helps you to strengthen that area. And eventually you can also start doing trotting over it. But again, if the horse is still, or has like lamenesses occasionally, depending on the weather or depending what it comes back from, I always got to watch out on this one, big circles. And I love the hill work that you brought in, because the horse just has to automatically step under more when it has to go kind of up and down. That's not necessarily lunging. You can do that also just riding them in a walk or easy trot. Cool. Yeah, always something to look into when they come off illnesses. Wow, we get a lot of life questions. I feel bad we're not keeping up with our actually questions in the list, but
Okay.
what we can filter. Yeah, thanks guys for the interest, and we appreciate that. That makes it also feel like this is worth. This is valuable for you guys when we do this. I just have to look at two channels, like who asked the question. So. And then Caitlin asked, any links for finding pony-sized lunging stuff? My guy is a Shetland. That's going to be fun. We also had one Shetland pony in the course. You can get mini lunging sir singles. I don't know which country you are, but I know, for example, Dover in the US has some. I can comment under below. I try to share some links with you afterwards for equipment. So we'll look into that. And then we have our next question. Look forward. Okay, that's good. I think we covered them all here. Yeah, feel free to have the questions continue coming in. And I will go through the list and answer the next questions. Actually, before we go in another question, Gibran, I'd love to open up a discussion with you. Just that I see a lot here. So one of the motivations for us to actually start this knowledge platform around lunging was when, and as people can hear, I have an accent, which is from Germany. When I came here the first time and I started with working or like being at different barns here, I was very surprised that people nobody knew actually sliding side reins or the different types of side reins and how to apply them correctly. So we started on the one hand, finding resources on where to order the side reins are a little bit difficult to get here, and also preparing videos and material on how to actually apply them properly. Every aid, no matter if it's the spurs in dressage or Western, or it is the side reins in lunging, applied wrongly is not a good aid, and it can be harmful for the horse. So it's kind of like a runner that has a wrong running shoe. You got to make sure your shoes are correctly and you use your right material depending on what you're doing in a proper way. So talking about side reins, I know we had some great discussions on the sliding side reins, and I know you also like to apply them. I'd love you to share a little bit about them. And actually, I know you have a pair that you'd love to show us on how they work, and tell us a little bit more about what it is and where you see the benefits of it.
The sliding side reins, well, I like because, well, for one, you should never force a frame. And so a lot of people equate side reins to a forced headset. And that's when we're in competition, we do not use the sliding side reins, but that's all I use in training. And that's because each one of my horses is at a different stage in their training. And so like my green horse and my retraining horse actually are similar in where they're at right now. But the side reins give you lots of different options on how you adjust them so that it creates a big triangle I have them here, but it's not very, it's hard to show, but you do a triangle. And so that when the horse raises his head, he gets pressure, but when he comes down, he gets release. So when you get a horse that's hollowed out, they'll get immediate block, and then they'll get the release. And so I find that's very helpful in green horses, retraining horses that want to run through. They have they're very hollow in their back when we want them to stretch down. And so it's really cool when you see that little click when they get it, and then they're just like, oh, this feels good, and they really start stretching down and reaching. The reins connect to the surcingle, and then you have these little rings here. It's really no different than the Laufer. Is that pronounced? Am I pronouncing them right? The Laufer reins.
Yeah.
That you tie. The difference is that you have these little rings, and they're exactly the same on both sides. So you've got the exact same length. So if you're on the first one on this top and the bottom, you can start with your triangle really wide. So ideally you start with your triangle wide in the low level of the training scale, and then you bring your triangle together and you keep that low, and then you lift it up. And that would be for a higher, an upper level horse, as with dressage would be similar. So as you go up in the training scale, that's how your reins would change. But lots of times I will take the reins. If I have a horse that's really hollowing out and I want him to stretch down, I might take the bottom rein off the shoulder and put it between the front legs.
Yep.
But when you do that, then you lose your shoulder control, and you have a horse that, so then I'll bring it up on the shoulder to help with that shoulder popping. Sometimes you have horses that are really, really one-sided, and so you really have to adjust those side reins to lift up a shoulder to help balance them through their shoulders. But there's a lot of adjusting. There's a lot of adjustments, as in riding. I mean, you're constantly adjusting your reins.
Yes.
It's just you have to stop and adjust them, but you really assess the horse, you assess their posture, their place in their training, and then you adjust it accordingly. That's where the double lunging work is great, because you can make those adjustments right away.
Yeah.
But I use these sliding side reins all the time. They're webbed cotton, like a lot of lunge lines. They don't stretch, but they do wear out. They wear out. I use them all the time. So, but I love them, and I've been using them for many years. I'm actually working on making a video on how to use them, because they're a little daunting when you first look at them. You're like, all those snaps and rings, and
what to do?
Even my own, I know, even my own people are like, oh my, like so I kind of even color coded them with little zip ties. I don't know if you can see.
I love it.
But like I do the colored one. So yes, I do snap this one to the bit. But it's just for training purposes. So there's green here and white, and so that kind of helps everybody figure it out and make more sense of it. But
That's
it's
awesome.
it's really been a huge training aid for me in my program, and I really love them. And like you said, it's really hard to find sliding side reins. Nobody here even knows what they are, let alone how to use them.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it's a very German thing.
It's funny. It is. It's also European. I'd say European thing. It's common in. There's also more resources available on it, and lots of in German.
Yeah.
So some of the material that we provide on the website is kind of translated from German and to give these examples. But English, all the English training in England, Ireland, very popular. There's a légèreté in France. They fall back to some of these approaches, but the naming kind of is true. That comes from Germany. The two types of adjusting them that you described is the one is a loafer rein. That's when it has a triangle on the side. And in the between the legs is what they call the Vienna reins. No clue. I think loafer is based on the person. Why the other is called Vienna. I don't think it comes from the city, but it's just the names. But so also for people that are interested, actually the reins that Gibran showed, I remember you mentioning if people are interested, they could actually acquire them through you. So
just have them contact me.
Yeah, feel free to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that
I'm on Facebook. You can find me that way. My email's ocvaulting@gmail.com. You can go to our website. But Facebook's probably the best way since this is a Facebook broadcast. Just message me on Facebook.
Perfect. So we would like to
and
pair.
I can hook you up.
Perfect. She can get them for you. And also we have a couple of blog posts actually on the website, the differences between the Vienna and the Loafer, when to apply them and the benefits of it. So I always we write weekly a blog. Yeah. So people have questions, go to our blog. And also I posted this in our, in the link, we have a e-course that's 10 classes that goes extensively through this and how to apply them directly. So people could also do that. But again, there is resources out there. That's kind of our purpose of this group, to answer you guys' questions and to offer the resources. And I'm always so excited when I meet people like you that actively apply them and see the benefit of it and the good success in it. So this is fun. So everybody, feel free if you have questions to reach out to either of us about the side reins. So I know we're running out of time. Let me see if we had like a question that was completely different to what we kind of saw before that we should still answer. Again, I think we have 30 to 40 people join a day. It's kind of wild. There's a lot of questions. Yeah. Like people picked out a couple. So let me see. Let's do one final question. That we can choose from. And yeah, we had this one. Maybe this one is an interesting one. The question I have about lunging is how to prevent tendon issues with lunging outside of not doing it for the excessive amount of time. So this question is from Hannah Joreen. I'll take you guys later, and probably I'm going to say the names all correctly. So I think what this question kind of goes towards to is, in general, there's two discussions on there. It's like, when do I lunge too much? When is lunging even bad? Like, when does it cause that the horse actually tightens up, or there's tendon issues happening from it? And the other question is, if this horse already comes with these issues, what can be exercises to actually help it, to soften that up? I think the answers kind of go both in a similar direction. I'll answer one part of it, and I'd love you to piggyback on all of it. I think when I have a discussion with people about, is lunging bad? I said, I think if you lunge your horse every day on a too small circle and invest only on one side, then it's very bad because it's way too much pressure on the inside of the horse's tendon. So important is lunging doesn't need to be always only on one circle. Like, it's important also to move the circle, go on the long side in between, and look into working on big circles, and do like a circle in and out exercise in between, for example, to encourage bending, but not have that being the rule. So then also lunging sessions don't need to be an hour. They can be like between 20 and 40 minutes, depending on how you start and end them. Meaning, like, if you I even recommend warming up the horse sometimes just in walk, leading it around. Doesn't need to walk already on a circle if you wanted to warm up in a walk. So that I think that's kind of the discussion on when is it too much that it goes in a negative effect and then causes tendon issues. And then we still have the question open on what can we do if a horse comes with tendon issues? What should we pay attention to? Gibran, feel free to answer to any of it.
Yeah, I think if a horse has any injury or issues, you first and foremost follow your vet's advice on work and incorporate the lunging in as part of your work program, and keep the circles big. Again, patience, be super patient. It's really tempting to get impatient and to rush through it, but I would keep it simple, keep it light, keep circles big, and focus on those walk trot transitions. Do poles, out, just walk over poles, walk over cavalettis. That's a big one. My vet has us do is we walk over cavalettis, which all my hunter jumper friends are jumping their ponies over.
That's awesome.
But think of it as a big log. I mean, a horse can walk over a log, so there's no reason they can't walk over a cavaletti. And be sure you keep them wrapped, and follow your vet's advice. That would be probably my biggest one. And be patient.
Yeah, lunging really is a lot about patience.
Yes.
And it's repetitive and consistency as well in the cues. Well, we're really running out of time. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks, Gibran, for joining.
Thanks for having me.
And I don't always have ask questions all by myself, but Tyler usually is joining me along, and one of the other coaches. Yeah, if everyone else has any questions, feel free to comment also in the live afterwards. We know many people watch it actually after the live. And cool. We will both be tagged in there, so you can contact either of us, or if you have questions, visit the website, send us an email, and happy holidays.
Likewise. Thank you. Okay.
Bye, guys. Bye-bye.